Well, g'day everybody. It is so good to be here today. And it's so good to see you. I am now having a second attempt at birding whilst we wait for the Z9, which I'm so excited about. I decided to pull out this beast here, and this is the D4. It's the last professional full-bodied vertical grip incorporated camera that I purchased. I decided to go the high resolution route as opposed to the high speed route after this. So the D810, the D800, the D810, and then the D850. Now, the D850, it would have been just as good in this scenario, or very close. But today, this is what we're testing. So we have, again, the beautiful 200 to 400 f4 through the range VR2. What a great lens, ED edition of course, and we're out birding. But the biggest change, besides not having the V1 here anymore, the biggest change is of course that, well, it's a new tripod. Now, as you know, with the last video, I didn't have a tripod and I got quite tired quite quickly, and then my phone started to ring. Please hold. Now, of course, we've got these new legs here, because last time I was shooting on this massive lens, which is something like 3.5 kilos, and with the D4, it would be getting up towards 5 kilos. I got tired very quickly. Now, some of you may well be laughing, and you know, it's good to laugh. I hear it's healthy. Some people actually have laughing clubs. They laugh every morning, so please do laugh. Some may be laughing. This is actually a video tripod, and it's actually really perfect for smooth, but then you can stop movement. You don't have to lock it off. So I thought, rather than buying one of those fancy heads which cost, I don't know, $500, $1,000, I thought I'd just give this a go today to see how it worked. And so far so good. I'm pretty excited by it. Plus, I'm not getting tired. So here we are. Now we've got some Pacific gulls over here, or a Pacific gull. And for the first time, I'm actually shooting the D4 on wide area auto. I've never done it. I just never needed to do it. And I'm actually pretty impressed. And I just need one of these birds to fly. But I have got some flying shots already. And yeah, I'm pretty impressed by how sticky it is. Now, I am not an expert in any way, shape or form on how to use this system in that way, nor on shooting fast-moving wildlife. But this is good gear, and 10 years ago, this was state-of-the-art, and it's still got it. That's what I love about this gear. Nikon, Canon, and whoever else. They make this stuff, and it lasts forever. That's not a flying bird, unfortunately. Now, the only thing about birding, of course, is you want the birds to do something. Well, I do. I want them to take off and land and stuff. And right now, I'll shoot you a little bit of this guy. He's, I think he's done some fishing, and he's having a nap. What do you do? The D4 had a 1080 mode in it. It doesn't shoot 4K. My first camera to shoot 4K was my Sony A7R III. So what we're going to do right now is shoot some video with that 1080p at 24 frames per second. Now that's a pretty good looking 1080 24. There it is right there. Joseph's capturing some 4K for us. Of course, we want a little bit of that as well.
Now, the video that we can see here, it's not on the same level as your Z6, your Z6 II, your Z7, and so on. Certainly not at Z9 level, but we're talking about a decade difference. Things like focusing and just ergonomics, because you had to use the live view screen on the back, and that's always a fair bit harder in some conditions than using your EVF as a video camera. Anyway, that's the way that I find it. This made video much more difficult in this era, and of course the maximum res was 1080p.
Again, this is footage from the D4, 1,000th of a second f5 ISO 200. It seems to be the lowest ISO Still, oh, our Pacific Goal has stood up. I wonder if that means he's going for a fly. Maybe. I maybe need to get ready. Oh, that freaked the bird out. Getting his very large wings out. Good looking wings, those wings. Get ready for action.
And I just wanted to jump into this video to talk about something that we've been talking about for a few years now. And now that the Z9 is oh so imminent, I do think it's time to touch on this again. Now, there has been certain corners of the internet that have suggested Nikon has failed, Nikon is bankrupt, and all of those sorts of headlines. Now, if you want to talk about clickbait, that is clickbait. That is the craziest clickbait I have ever seen. Because, well, it's simply not true. And I want to go back in time a little bit to talk about how important this era of camera was. If we go back to 2011 and 2012, we get these cameras here. This is the D4 and the V1. And these cameras, we can see what Nikon was trying to achieve a decade ago. In the V1, sure, we had a small sensor, but we did have a detachable lens, mirrorless camera. And this was happening in 2011/2012. This is when it all kicked off. And Nikon came up with some pretty interesting technologies, as well as super high frame rates in this little beauty here. And then, so if that wasn't for you, then in their F system, they were still continuing to excel. With this camera here, yeah, sure, it was a modest 10 frames per second, but it just kept getting faster as we got the D5 and the D6. Of course, there are physical limits to what you can do throwing a shutter up and down, and we're seeing that now, 10 years later. The best way to get high speed is to remove the shutter out of the equation. So of course, we have had the A9, the A9 II, and more recently, we've had the R5. But let's again just prosecute and litigate that statement that Nikon has failed and Nikon is bankrupt. No, me and many others were saying the whole time, they are neither of these things. They're just working hard to deliver something extraordinary. And that is exactly what has happened. The Z9 is here, and based on what we have seen, both in the specifications, along with perhaps, I don't know, 20 or 30 different users using it out there in the wild, pre-production units. Production units are only just starting to appear. This camera is extraordinary. Of course, it does things like 8K, 2 hours of recording, and it doesn't even break a sweat. And of course, it is the first 35mm full frame, high speed, full bodied camera to remove the shutter altogether. Yes, Sigma have done that, but I don't think they did it successfully. So Nikon were working super hard. They were a bit quiet, I suppose, on this front, but they were working super hard to deliver us best in class. That's what people like me thought was going to happen, and indeed, that appears to be what has happened. And what I can say here is, even with this technology, I had never turned on auto area wide, full continuous or 3D tracking. I'd never turned it on. I never knew how good it was. And even 10 years ago, very impressive. The narrative that some of us have had to endure over the last few years has been, to say it in a word, disappointing. And I am very much looking forward to that narrative being laughed at in the corner of a room somewhere. Because anything
other than that is simply not acknowledging the truth of what Nikon has delivered with the Z9. And not only that, but Nikon was delivering, they were working up to this moment a decade ago, and it's here. And both of these cameras still work, and they still show what Nikon was working towards 10 years ago. As we come to the lead up to the Z9 launch, I'm super excited about. I'm doing these for fun. I'm doing these Z9 videos because, of course, we're all so excited. We're all on the edge of our seats about it. And I'm so sorry if some people are getting the wrong idea, but it really is just my excitement and enthusiasm. Plus, I'm a photographer and I love technology and I love looking at the history and I love understanding how we get from A to B. Why are we here and what have they achieved? But from my personal perspective, Nikon never failed. They never let me down. And I do feel like very exciting things are afoot for 2022. All right, back to birding at the beach with the big guns.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by how sticky this AFC all area. Obviously we don't have the whole frame like we do on a mirrorless camera, or near on the whole frame. Tough sport. We've been here for about 6 hours, and I'm only joking, and not a lot's happened. As a birder, you've got to be so patient, and you've got to know your birds. And, you know, now this being my second session, I think you need to be a little bit like a fisherman. So now I'm just trying to fold this up and get it over my shoulder. And it's a bit hard to do without killing yourself. But yes, I think being a birder is actually a lot about, this looks comfortable, doesn't it? A lot about being zen. It's a very zen pastime. You kind of might have to walk for hours, then wait for hours, and then come home empty-handed. You've got to be zen to do all that stuff, I would have thought.